You might find over time, if you inch it forward, your comfort zone, that before you know it, a couple months down the line, you're doing things that a few months back you would be shocked to even consider.
Welcome to Locales Unknown. This podcast gives you the tools you need to choose your next travel destination and the tips you want to be able to explore like a local. Here are your hosts, Chris and Winfield.
Hello, everyone. I'm here today with Chris Corigliano, my co-host on Locales Unknown. We've just started this new podcast where we're just getting to know each other in the sense that we're taking a different stance at our relationship, and that we're starting from a travel perspective and instead of from obviously all of our years together. But how's it going, Chris?
It's good, Winfield. Appreciate the time. Definitely loved spending some time with you, answering the questions. And this is definitely going to be a new journey, new chapter of our friendship for sure. 15 years in the making, finally being able to jump on a hot mic and talk about our experiences. Exactly.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and looking forward to doing more with you. We have a lot in store for you. We're going to be going around the world here. But let's start from the beginning and kind of how we got our inspiration. So without further ado, here's my interview with Chris Corigliano. Hello, world. I'm here today with my buddy, Chris Corigliano. Hard to believe we've known each other for almost 15 years now, but what's going on, man? How have you been?
Easy, man. 15 years. I remember the first day that we met back in college. That is crazy. Time flies.
That it does. Keep the good times rolling, though, right?
So, absolutely. I'm surprised it took us this long to get this going.
You're telling me. Long overdue. So tell us a bit about your travel journey. How did it start off? What was your inspiration? And where do you see yourself now from when you started?
Yeah, that's a lot, man. So I was fortunate enough to get a lot of travel exposure when I was younger. My family traveled around quite a bit, whether it be packing up an RV and doing some national parks when we were younger with my older siblings and my dad. We had exposure to the typical vacation places for Americans, the Bahamas, Mexico, DR. And then we did a little bit of Europe, which was awesome, specifically Italy, which was just incredible. But, I didn't really appreciate it at the time. And then even in college, I remember you were always off doing your thing, and it was always great to see the travels, but I never really took the initiative to make that my own. I was so concentrated on building the 9-to-5 lifestyle, gotta, be a master of the universe type thing. And I remember my dad actually pushed me and my girlfriend at the time to take a trip overseas after graduation. So we did 1 month, a little over a month, and we did Western Europe. We had Ireland, England, Paris, all over Italy, as well as Munich, Germany, and then of course the Netherlands for a little bit. So I had a great time, but again, it didn't sink in because I was so concentrated on just the work life and this and that. But I guess at the same time, I was also moving around a lot. So that change of scenery, even though it wasn't overseas in this, glamorous trip where it's a 15-hour plane ride and everyone's watching on social media, I still had my own little travels and, kind of had it my own way. And then finally, it was about 2016, 2017, where I was just kind of stuck in a rut. At that time, I was in Cincinnati, Ohio, and just wasn't feeling the trajectory that I was in. And I was really obsessed with just seeing different ways of life. And I realized the best way to do that is to go out and really experience and make those stories and adventures my own. So at that point, committed myself to saving up for an entire year and then backpacking. So I left a career. At that point in time, I was in the financial industry, and I saved up for a year, packed a carry-on size backpack, and then just took off. So hit New Zealand, Southeast Asia. I took a little trip to Hawaii and back to New Zealand during that time, went all over Southeast Asia, and then eventually came back and did some more stuff since I was back. I absolutely love adventure travel. So I did base camp trek to Mount Everest. I'm going to Machu Picchu soon. So that's really my motivation, not only seeing different ways of life, but experiencing things on my own. And, have it on my phone, as cheesy as it might be, on my home screen. It just says live the adventure. And that's something I really try to aspire to.
Indeed. No, that's
That's my long-winded
fantastic
answer for
story.
you, buddy.
No, not at all. That's great. And it's interesting how you juxtaposed the start of that, because it sounded like a sort of an atypical background in terms of travel. You started off with the family stuff. It's closer to home. And then you did the Europe junket, which I feel like a lot of people who are listening to this have either been there or they're about to do that, about to start their kind of first foray into transatlantic travel. And then you follow that up with something that most of us just aspire to, where you just take off with a suitcase, no idea where you're going. Here's a map of the Pacific, go to town.
Yeah, man, it was great. And honestly, looking back on it, and I use this metaphor a lot. So there were the games when you were younger where you had the circle, the triangle, and the square, and you had those blocks and you had to fit it in the right holes. And
Yep.
I just found myself looking back at what I was doing for the longest time. There was always just this undertone of something's not right. And it's almost like trying to take one of those pieces and put it in the wrong hole. So like fitting a square in a triangle or something, it just didn't match up, right? And you need to always make sure that you're measuring your life on the right metric, and that metric is subjective. So that's something that I realized. I was a little bit of a late bloomer in that sense. And as soon as I did, I kind of rolled with it. And, life has its way of just unfolding the way it happens. Although when I took off, man, I was nervous as anything for sure, but excited at the same time. And I remember thinking right before I left, which was in April of 2018, that I don't have any plans to come back for a year, 2 years, who knows? I mean, of course, COVID would have changed that, but I ended up coming back about just shy of 10 months because I met my girlfriend at the time, and we had a great time. And her trajectory led her back to the U.S., and the relationship was the most important. So I went back. We ended up moving to Denver for a while, and still kind of continuing limited travel, but now I'm down in Jacksonville, Florida, and I'm back into the mindset of what I was before that trip. And it's just, there's unfinished business out there. So I'm really looking forward not only to starting this podcast with you, getting this going, to be able to get that inspiration for different places to go, what to do, especially off the beaten path, which I know you and I both love, but also just get back to what I really love.
Exactly. There's nothing better than just that feel of exhilaration, where picking up on that, what scared you more? Was it I'm just going to be organic and see what happens, or the fact that the unknown out there? What are these countries all about? I haven't spent much time outside of your typical box when it comes to the Caribbean and Europe.
Yeah, so I think the fear just came, one, because it's a huge life decision. I'm quitting my job, taking away all of the roots, although my roots weren't too deep anyway. I kind of moved around a lot, but essentially just making a big leap. And I think whether it be someone in the normal 9 to 5 who's switching jobs, or just going and doing something that is out of their norm, will always have those butterflies in their stomach. But this was just, it was awesome. I'm very much a control type person. I like to plan things out. I live off of my to-do list on my phone a lot of the time. So when I see that blank sheet on my phone, because I'm not putting anything, because I have nothing in front of me except for anything that I want whenever I want, it's a little nerve-wracking at first and something to get used to. Also, I just didn't know what was in store. That fear, I would trade fear with the word nervous, just because there was some type of nervousness, like before getting on a big ride, or, I like to go skydiving or something. I always get that feeling, but it's not going to hold me back. And I feel fear would hold somebody back. And this was nervous excitement, I would say.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
And that might lead into another aspect as well, because you had the flexibility to do that because of your lifestyle choices. What would you say to people that may not have that same kind of flexibility in terms of being able to make new forays into the unknown?
Yeah, so I think you have to start off with the preface that we were all born pretty lucky if we're having this conversation as U.S. citizens, right? So these are first world problems that we're talking about. The fact that we can go travel to everyone else's locale and see how they're living their daily life. I think it's very important when doing so. You realize that a lot of these people that you're going to run into and have experiences with, they're not able to do the same thing you are. So you have to go in with that mindset as well. So that's number one, right? There's an appreciation of the fact that we were just born lucky into this country, having the flexibility and freedom. Now, everything else, I think, is a matter of what you want most, right? So I remember there were a lot of shifts in my behavior, mentality, everything the year leading up to achieving the goal of taking off. I mean, I sold pretty much everything I owned. I remember I was kind of a recluse a little bit. I wouldn't go out to the bars where my friends were. I wouldn't do anything like that. I would save every dime, even when I was, let's say, splurging and ordering some food, whatever that price tag was on the food, I would put the same amount into my travel savings. So, you have to, just like anything else in life, like, what are you willing to sacrifice and how much suck are you willing to put up with, and define that suck, right? So a lot of people might be sitting out there listening at their 9-to-5 job, typing away, hunched over at a desk saying this sucks, absolutely. But they're willing to put up with it because they enjoy the lifestyle it provides, the freedom in the sense of financial freedom a little bit that it gives. At the same time, travel's not all sunshine and rainbows, right? You know this, you're extremely well traveled, more than I am. And you have to put up with a lot of suckiness, but you don't talk about that. You don't really remember that because you're willing to put up with that amount of suck for the end goal being the joys of travel. So,
right. No, precisely. Then that's a great lead into priorities, because a lot of times when you're on an excursion or when you're on a particular path with a group or otherwise, you are kind of subjected to the group suck, if you will, to use your term.
Yeah.
But when you blaze your own trail and get off of that collective Lonely Planet circuit, I'll call it, you can really open your eyes to the unknown and to places that you wouldn't see otherwise.
I think goes into a mentality as well that you were talking about. You got to be completely open. I mean, I think travel's such a all-encompassing term, and it means so many different things to so many different people. Of course, it's a change of location, but is it about the culture? Is it about the history? Is it about the experience? Is it all of it combined? I know you are you're a history buff, always have been. So I think the value you might get out of it might be a little bit different for me, because I'm not necessarily that entrenched in the history of the various places. I go a lot more for the adventurous side of things, doing the unknown, doing something a little bit out of the norm in an out of the norm place, I would say. So that's my adventure of it. Whereas, a lot of other people will strictly go for cultures or strictly go for historical landmarks. It really all just depends on what it means to you overall.
No, indeed. I completely agree with that. And in terms of, let's back up on openness, because that was really tough for me when I first started traveling as well, is trying to figure out, okay, well, how open do I want to be? Do I want to try this local food that I would never have in my own country? Do I want to walk down this street where I don't know who's waiting around the next corner? Where do you draw the line with that?
That's a good question. And, going back to my whole, I'm a to-do list type of guy. I remember putting together a bucket list for this trip, and I wanted those out of the box experiences. So I was like, eat something weird in Southeast Asia, right? And I ended up eating a scorpion.
I've done that.
Yeah. Or just make friends with a local and do something. And when I was in Bali, I was invited to somebody's wedding just after a 5-minute conversation at a hostel. So it was a local wedding. So I think you just need to go and understand your boundaries and your limits. Of course, I think most people who take off like this or just love the experience of travel, their comfort zone might be a little bit more expansive than someone who's sitting at home listening to the news, reading articles online where the world is a deadly dangerous place. The reality is starkly different. I mean, it's completely different. I was welcomed everywhere that I went with nothing but hospitality and kindness. I remember being in, I think we were in Malaysia. I was with my ex-girlfriend at the time, and we got in late, no fault of our own. It was just a late flight. And unfortunately, we didn't have any cash, local currency, because we were coming from Thailand. Yeah, we were coming from Thailand. So we had to find the nearest ATM. And it was maybe midnight. And I remember we were just looking around, and we finally found an ATM. The door was open. I tried to go use it, and all of a sudden just sirens start going off. And it was the actual alarm of the bank.
Oh my God.
Freaking out. Yeah. So I thought I was robbing a bank or something. People across the street were looking out their windows. I'm like, oh, here we go. This is the end of the trip right here. Locked up.
Chris in a foreign jail.
I thought it was, excuse me, going to be on the next episode of Locked Up Abroad. But a guy, a rickshaw driver was just coming by, and he told us to relax, no worries. And in fact, he took us on a ride all the way to the only open ATM within, a couple mile distance, couple kilometer distance, I guess. And didn't even want any money for it. Of course, we, tipped him for his hospitality. But, things like that are what can happen on the road. So as far as putting your limitations in a box or how far are you willing to go, I think what you might find is go with an expectation and try to exceed that just a little bit on a daily basis, and listen to your intuition as well. If it's telling you don't go down that street and you don't know who's waiting for you, maybe peek your head around and then walk the other way. So at least you see what's down that, but you don't necessarily need to walk every single step down that road either. Because you might find over time, if you inch it forward, your comfort zone, that before you know it, a couple months down the line, you're doing things that a few months back you would be shocked to even consider.
Precisely. And I think that's not that the openness is the only theme of this intro episode, but that really goes to the heart of one of the main reasons I travel, because I know that when I started out, I had so many preconceived notions and assumptions about the world, basically through the lens that we see the Western media collectively. And when you debunk those myths, when you challenge yourself, as you said, that's when you get the biggest breakthroughs. And of course, there's a line with that. That's subjective to every individual. But eventually, you're going to find a time where you're going to want to push the envelope a bit more. And and you've clearly found that balance, which I think in and of itself is one of the main reasons to travel.
I would completely agree. And, not to knock the United States, but if you take an objective look at things, some of our crime rates in big cities are a little bit alarming, so we have to look at home too. I live in Jacksonville, Florida. If I'm not going to go and look what the, crime rate is in Chicago before I go visit the Millennium Mile or anything, I'm just going to go because it's my backyard per se. Mm-hmm. But if you look at, from an outside perspective, Chicago might not be the safest place on earth. So it's important to just understand, at least from my perspective and what I've seen so far, and maybe you can attest to this too, people are genuinely good, right? Of course, you're going to have your bad apples out there, but people, they just want to take care of their family and live a happy life and just enjoy the time that they have. It's all limited, and it goes into a lot of the cultural aspects of things as well, where if you don't push that comfort zone and you kind of just keep within your bubble and just bring it wherever you are, you're not actually going to see the benefits of the way other people do things in different cultures. Because it might be a lot better in your eyes and my eyes than what we do back home. By the end of the trip, I felt extremely comfortable in Southeast Asia. And I mean, you're talking about a place where you own one pair of sandals, probably 2 shirts, 2 shorts, and you call it a day, but you have a smile on your face the whole time. So, it's starkly different than what we had back home.
No, completely. I couldn't agree more. And in terms of going back to your point about human beings being intrinsically just warm-hearted individuals, I think that that's very much the case. And the hospitality that I've received and just experienced all over the world, it's been nothing short of phenomenal. And of course, to your point, there are people out there that wish you ill will and that want to usually scam you financially in some way. And that comes with the territory, unfortunately. But it's also something where you have to look at it from their perspective. We were talking about privilege a little bit earlier. And if somebody comes along and for them, it's an extra $5 as an example in their local currency. At the end of the day, I'm fine with that because you're not harmed physically. Yes, you're upset about it because somebody tried to take advantage of you, but it's not something that's going to impact your long-term psyche. And the trip, the memories of the experience overall are probably going to outweigh something of that nature.
I think that's a true travel mentality, and I can't wait to dig into your history because you have far more experience across the globe than I do. But I would say, I think that comes down to being a traveler at heart too, because like I was saying about what kind of suck can you put up with, it's also the sense of what are you willing to just brush off your shoulders, right? Every single decision when you're on the road really needs to have your full attention. Where am I going to sleep tonight? What am I going to eat? Am I going to go to this restaurant, that restaurant? What am I going to see? How am I going to jam pack my day? Whatever the case might be, even if you're taking a lazy day, it's not like you can go on autopilot at home, right? So when something doesn't go your way, which happens multiple times a day, at least in my experience, you just kind of roll with it. I had 2 instances where I was shaken down by the cops in 2 different countries in Southeast Asia. But okay, you just roll with it. And at the end of the day, you have this funny story to look back on. You're not hurt or anything. In the moment, it can be a little bit intimidating. But overall, you just have to kind of see what you're willing to put up with and what you're not. And I think a lot of people end their quote unquote trip because they're just too much is not going the way that they planned. And I think there's a big difference between a vacation and traveling. And a lot of that kind of goes into that as well. Vacation, what's going to happen, right? You're going to sit on the beach, you're going to get a bunch of drinks, you're going to go eat too much, and then you can do it all over again. Maybe the pool tomorrow.
Exactly.
Traveling is you're living your life on the go. And just like when you live your life at home, things are not going to go your way. Things are going to happen. You're just going to have to deal with it. So yeah, it's important. And I think your perseverance is definitely going to be a test, or to be tested, I guess you could say.
Indeed. Be a traveler, not a tourist, right?
That's right.
And,
where I heard that from.
What was that?
I said, I wonder where I heard that.
No, exactly. You had it spot on there. So you talked about your zeal for adventure earlier. Why don't you tell listeners about not only your base camp experience, but how you progressively ramp up the adventure scale and thereby explore parts of the world that are even less traveled.
Sure. Yeah. So I think I've always had a little bit of a taste for adventure. Obviously it builds on itself, but I remember after high school graduation, I went skydiving and I was hooked at that point. And, I'm a big roller coaster person. Like I like that adrenaline rush, some might call it adrenaline junkie or whatever, but I like pushing the boundaries as well. Like I was saying about the whole fear and nervousness before. I always get nervous before these things, but when you can push yourself through that in a safe manner, obviously you got to know your limits. And I had a recent experience scuba diving where I had to back out, where you just have to know your limits. I wasn't there mentally, but when you push the limits beyond the nervousness and don't let that get the best of you, I feel like it's so much more rewarding. And those are the type of experiences I looked for. Of course, I had a whole bunch of stuff I wanted to do overseas when it came to adventure. And I'll get to the base camp experience in just a second. But, as you progress, you find that there's many adventures in everything. And it's just, wading into the unknown type of thing. And eventually, my girlfriend at the time and I we traveled together for about 5 to 6 months, and we would travel from city to place to place to place. And, unless you have one thing like going to Siam Reap specifically to go to Angkor Wat, Cambodia, then you're just kind of wandering a city and taking a look at it. And I noticed that although it's awesome to see how these different cities run, it all kind of bleeds together. So I wanted something to accomplish. And that's when I leaned a little bit further towards the adventure travel. And Everest Base Camp was always on my list. It's something that I hold in high regard. Of course, much higher would be summiting Everest, but I like to say that I walk to where the real men begin. The experience for now. Right. So it was a great opportunity. At that point, we were back in the U.S. living in Cincinnati. I was kind of the guy on the couch at my sister's place. Thanks, Dan, if you listen to this. And I needed something to look forward to. I was itching to get back on the road, and this was something on the bucket list for a while. So I decided to jump to it, and it was an incredible experience. So I went as a solo traveler, but I had to join a group. It just makes things so much easier. I did meet a couple people that decided to make the journey themselves, and it really wasn't difficult as far as getting from point A to B every day. But dealing with the intricacies of housing and the guest house, as well as the permits, so on and so forth, having a guide just made it so much easier. So I got matched up with an awesome group. Couldn't ask for anybody better. So there was a girl who just graduated college from Canada, as well as 3 guys out of Seattle, Washington. 2 of them former SWAT team members. 1 guy was active. And it was just awesome. Good vibes. Everyone had a great energy. It was tough, man. About halfway through, we had one acclimatizing day, so a 0 day. And at that point in time, the next day I woke up sick as a dog. I ended up having a respiratory infection. But when you're that high up and you have this thing on the list, again, with the whole perseverance, you just go, one foot in front of the other. It was miserable, I'll be honest,
I'm sure.
Looking at the big picture, it was awesome, proud of myself, this and that. But man, during the time, I was like, why am I doing this? This sucks. But it was great. I mean, I had the great motivation of my group, my guide. And the last day, when we finally got to base camp, there was a blizzard. So it was a whiteout. Oh. And it just made the experience more and more. And I actually remember waking up that morning, even though I was sick, knowing that we were going to make it to base camp, having envisioned this for years before, even before taking off on my trip. It hit home, and I got right up and just went to it. So I take that spirit of adventure and kind of go other places. I can't say I've been to the far corners of the world, unlike, you who have some awesome stories and some places that most people wouldn't even consider going. My destinations might be a little bit more on the beaten path, but what I do there is I just try to make it my own experience. And that's why I think with this podcast, especially because we're going to be talking to a lot of people who are locals in this very area, in the various countries, will be able to guide us to the direction of, yes, you can go see this, but this is what we do, right? And that just the fact that you're doing something that most people don't, and you haven't seen on social media very often, or don't read 100 blog posts about, that right there is an adventure in and of itself.
Precisely. Yeah, a lot to pick up on there. And first comment that comes to mind is, how can you top that? I mean, Everest Base Camp, you're already the highest point on Earth, right?
Well, that's what I was saying, man. I went to where the real men summit. So base camp is just the start of it. I walked up there, but those guys are then at base camp for 6 weeks, going all the way up to the summit, from camp 1, 2, 3. So that's a good way to top it. And I know that you and I have already talked multiple times about doing our own summit excursions sometime soon.
Oh, definitely. That would be the crown jewel, to put it mildly.
Just getting started for sure. Kilimanjaro's on the list as well. Next, What are we in?
The whole 7 summits. Rattle them off.
We'll see about that. Can I rattle them off? No, I can say 5 of them, but that's about it. But I know all of them.
Don't put me on the spot. But
I just I have Google for the rest. So exactly. One at a time, right?
For sure. Now, I think the toughest one to get to would be Antarctica.
Yeah.
Because you got to fly in and out on a charter flight. And then I've heard these accounts from people who go down there. Just all they see is nothing but white for days, just endless snow and ice. And you come back to the lush greenery of, well, I guess Florida is considered lush relative to Antarctica, right? And you're just, you feel like you're on another planet. So something to look forward to, indeed.
One day. It's funny you said that because I was listening to a whole bunch of things about people's experience. So actually down there, there's opportunities for work. So doing the cruise, the various cruises, or just flying directly, let's just say it might break the bank for the majority of us. So how do you find other good ways? So there was a couple that did it. I can't remember the name and I apologize, but they actually applied and went down there for 5 months to work. And they were talking about what an incredible experience, but maybe one day.
Right.
Maybe one day. There's plenty more
to have a science background for that? Sorry.
Not necessarily. That's what I thought too, because I thought it was like Mars where you have to actually be useful in order to get down there. But everyone's got to eat, right? So I think this couple, they worked in the kitchen. So I think the experience kind of varies, but it's a long process to get down there. Indeed. And they went in the summer, so it's 5 months of nothing but sunlight.
Right.
And then in the winter, you have to take a psychological exam because it's nothing but 5-6 months of darkness. So
right. No, exactly. I thought that most of the expeditions came back during the winter because it's just too harsh, but I guess it depends on the country because there's so many different stations down there.
Yeah.
Your respective country obviously has a different mission statement for each research expedition.
I think there are people down there all year round, but you're right. The majority of the expeditions do come back in winter.
No, indeed. That's and going back to your point about solo versus group travel, I think that's something we're going to do an entire episode on because there's a lot to unpack there. But in an excursion like that, group travel I think is almost essential. I'm typically more of a solo traveler, just travel with my wife type deal. But where do you draw the line between group travel in certain settings and solo travel writ large, let's say?
Yeah, so I'll kind of break it down where there's never been a time where I say, I want to go to this country. Let me look up a group tour. Right. So,
that makes two of us.
Yeah, that's just not the way I do it. I traveled with my ex-girlfriend for a while, and obviously you travel with your wife, but you almost consider that solo travel as well. You guys are attached to the hip 24/7. You might as well just be one person anyway at that point in time. So that's how I like to do it. How I'll normally do it is book a ticket, in and out of the country, and then figure it out once I'm there. But on these various excursions, you're right. It's just so much easier because there's a lot of logistics that go into it. Now, whether you're going to do a porter or not, have someone carry your pack, I just carried all my stuff in base camp, so it's just one less person. But they match you up just to make it easy. So I generally draw the line when it's, what's the end objective? When I'm going to a country and I'm just going to explore, there's no need for me to have someone dictate that exploration whatsoever, especially because, what if you want to go against the group? What if you want your own individual experience? That's kind of why we're building this podcast together, is to talk about those off the beaten path experiences. And you can't get that traveling in a tour bus, right?
Precisely.
So I draw the line on the objective. If I'm wandering a country, I'll wander the country and just let things be. If I am going with a mission of a trek or a summit, or, for example, I'm going in September, we're talking August 1st here together, 2021, and I'm going at the end of September. So next month, the Machu Picchu. Right. And I'll be going specifically for the Machu Picchu trek. So I'm only in the country an extra 3 days, 2 beforehand, 1 at the end. So in that case, I'm going to jump into a group just to make things easier. Sure. Also, when you go on treks like that, at least from my experience so far, although you're in a group setting, the experience is still your own. It's not like you guys are doing a tour bus, hop on, hop off, take a few pictures, come back on type of thing. This is more like, okay, today we need to reach X point. We start together, we have some breakfast, and then see you there. You can walk at your pace. You can go as fast as you want, as slow as you want, take 1,000,001 pictures. Doesn't make a difference as long as you just show up at the next location and make sure, everyone knows you didn't fall off or anything.
Right. Exactly.
You're set. So I think that's important too, because there's a big difference between jumping in a group on a trek or, an excursion, or jumping on a group tour across the country.
Indeed. No, exactly right. And it's going to be a case-by-case basis. There isn't any bright line rule. I think you summed that up quite well. And each country is going to dictate that as well, because some places infrastructure is going to be a little bit more limited. Some places going to be better, especially if you're on a tight timeline. Sometimes the only thing that you can do if you're moving around quickly is to do a group tour, because you can see 3 or 4 or 5 things in a day that you wouldn't be able to do if you were renting a car, say, if you were doing that with public transportation.
There's also some things that you really can't get to without being in a group.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was in North Vietnam, we did Ha Long Bay. And in order to do that, you really needed to buy into the group, and you were out on the boat. And okay, you might be able to see it just from the coastline, but if you want to actually immerse yourself in the experience and have the entire day out there, then you need to buy into a group. So I remember resisting group settings so much when I first left, just because, where's the adventure in that? It's already pre-planned. Someone was just in my seat an hour ago, 2 days ago, whatever the case might be. Like I'm just on a conveyor belt here.
Right.
But you come to terms with it, and it's really about the objective.
Right. Yeah, precisely. So we're going to go ahead and move into the lightning round now. This is where I'm going to ask Chris 10 questions, and he's just going to have to answer with the first thing that comes to mind. So are you ready?
Drum roll. Let's do it.
One wish, what would it be?
I would like to not have to worry about money and just go travel.
Which country do you want to visit the most, and why?
Morocco's on the high point of my list right now. I have yet to be in that part of the world, and I've just always held it in such high regard. It seems exotic, and I really want to experience that culture. I have some of my heritage is Lebanese. Of course, I want to get to Lebanon and the rest of the Middle East, but Morocco is definitely up there.
Very nice. What's one place or thing in your country you still really want to do?
Yosemite. I have not been to Yosemite yet.
Very nice. So you're going to love it.
Yep.
Strangest thing you've eaten?
That has to be, well, I'm not entirely sure if I've had dog or not when I was in Cambodia, but
I thought I had gerbil, so we might have.
I don't know. I mean, I remember seeing the signs at restaurants like, we do not serve dog or cat. And I distinctly remember not eating at some of the restaurants that didn't, or that had that sign. So I don't know. But anyway, I officially know that I've eaten a scorpion on the streets of Bangkok.
Very nice. Hope that
wasn't bad.
Just the stinger.
No, it wasn't bad. I'll be honest. Maybe it was
nice and crispy, deep fried.
Yeah, it tastes like crab. Tastes like crab. You just got to close your eyes and hope for the best, I guess.
There you go. Not what I would expect. So there you have it. Favorite thing about the U.S.?
I like how drastically different the various regions are. I mean, we're a country of multiple different countries, in all honesty. And when you go to the different parts of the U.S., you can really experience the various cultures and truly see how vast everything is. And it's absolutely gorgeous in a lot of the places that I've been.
What's a tip for travelers?
You don't need everything that you think. And more than likely, they sell it at the location you're going to. You don't need to pack everything. It's not like you're going to Mars. Don't worry. They do have toothbrush, toothpaste. People do wear clothes across the globe. So whatever you leave behind, I'm sure you can find there. Great advice. We've already touched on this a little bit, but just sum up your motivations for travel. Yeah. So true motivation, of course, would be to live that adventure. I think going back to before my true backpacking trip, I remember having a shift in mindset of being older, at the end of my life. What do I really want? Do I want to have an amass of money, or do I want to be the one with all the stories? And I went towards the latter. And yeah, that's a big thing for me, is to live this story and chase the adventure.
Very nice. Which mode of transportation do you recommend for the U.S.?
For the U.S., I would say either a car or a flight. Trains are pretty pricey, depending on your budget and your means of travel. They can be a little bit isolating as well. Mm-hmm. I would say a car obviously has the most flexibility, but if you're just looking to get to your destination, nothing beats a quick flight. Try those budget airlines.
Right. Now they're making a comeback now too.
That they are. For now, we'll see what happens in the coming months. Fingers crossed.
There's one experience you could relive in your life. What would that be?
The first time that I got to New Zealand, I remember getting off the plane. I flew into Queenstown, and I was so exhausted. I had the 15-hour flight from LA to Sydney, bunch-hour layover, and then the 3.5-hour flight down to Queenstown. And I remember just being so disoriented, but stepping outside that tiny airport in Queenstown and seeing the mountains and everything was worth it. I knew I was making the right decision at that point. So
like you're on the moon or something, right? With all the fjords and the geographic.
Yeah, I was expecting, Legolas to come riding by.
Surprised you didn't see the Hobbit or someone pop over.
Yeah, right. I mean, honestly, it was gorgeous, and I remember waiting until I got there to read The Lord of the Rings. So just took a hike. A couple days later, sat there against the mountains, and it was an incredible experience.
Indeed. Well, thanks so much for your time today, Chris. It's always a pleasure, and look forward to next time.
100%, Winfield. Thanks for the time, man. Really appreciate it. This was awesome.
What a great episode today with Chris. Really enjoyed hearing about his perseverance on base camp and pushing himself beyond the limits while also listening to his body. It's really what travel is all about, in the sense that you find new aspects of yourself and you learn what you can do to challenge yourself and grow. So today we've wrapped up, but please catch us next time. We got a lot of great guests in the pipeline. We're going to take you around the world with people from all over the place, different continents and cultures. Please follow us on social media, Locales Unknown. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. If you want to reach out to us directly by email, we're at contact@localesunknown.com. Really looking forward to hearing your comments, questions, any suggestions you may have, or things you want to know about. Let us know. We are here for you. Have a great rest of the day, wherever you are time zone wise, and looking forward to talking to you next time. Take care.